Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. The Stairs, quote, is a sobering, heartfelt experience that has the power to make viewers love the neighbors they might have otherwise shunned or ignored. This is one of the finest docs ever produced about life in Toronto. To call it essential would actually be selling it short. It's practically mandatory viewing if you live here, close quote. That is a quote from the Toronto film scene. You've got to see this film, The Stairs, and I'm hoping you're about to listen to the full conversation with the director and producer Hugh Gibson of the film of the same title, The Stairs. Check it out. It's going to be at the Lightbox for a week coming up in a few days, and I'm hoping it's going to be available online. Check out the website as well, The Stairs. Hugh and I talk about a lot of things. Of course, we talk about Toronto. We talk about the film. We talk about the process. But we talk a lot about social justice and compassion and having empathy for others. And the film is about sort of seeing life through the eyes of three folks who are struggling, and aren't we all on some level? And at the risk of overstating, and I said this to you, I am a better person for having seen this film, and I want you to see it. I hope you'll listen to the interview. We talk about self-expression, and we talk about poetry and about harm reduction policy. Get ready for a great conversation with Hugh Gibson, and don't forget to check out rabble.ca and davidpecklive.com for more podcasts and my book and opportunities to book me as a public speaker as well if you're interested. But Hugh Gibson is coming up talking about The Stairs. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We're joined by a special guest today, a filmmaker, kind of doing a bit of a series here, a filmmaker series on Face to Face, kind of just an extension of the Toronto International Film Festival. And I don't know, I think I'm pushing about 30 interviews. Hugh Gibson's here with us today to talk about his film, The Stairs. Hugh, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate the opportunity.
My pleasure, David. Thank you.
So you're just coming off TIFF. I mean, it's pretty interesting. I've been getting emails from publicists, and hey, David, have you recovered? So have you recovered? I guess there's my opening question, Hugh. Have you recovered from the craziness of TIFF, the standing ovations, the parties, etc.?
There's no rest for the wicked, David. Absolutely not. And part of the reason is diving right into releasing the film at Bell Lightbox as of this Friday, October 7th. So getting immediately geared up for that after TIFF.
So what does that mean for you as a filmmaker for releasing as a documentary in Canada? Is there a lot of splash and hopefully tons of ripple?
Well, ideally, yeah. I mean, so I directed the film. I also produced it. So, yeah, definitely relying on a lot of good word of mouth.
Yep.
Fortunately, the film was really well received at TIFF.
Nice.
That was big. A film of, this size, I guess you could say. It's really important, especially at a big event like TIFF. Tend to be perhaps lost under the big names.
For sure.
So any way to stand out is great. But yeah, it was a great way to premiere the film locally, especially with the community involved in the film. Got out to see it and got a sort of spotlight on them and got kind of a moment, it was really special, actually. Very emotional. Yeah.
I was drawn to the film for so many reasons. One, having grown up just outside of Toronto and now live out of it, spent a lot of time working there, skateboarding in a part of the Toronto that you're filming in for a couple of years. I was really drawn to not only the obviously the blurb and the trailer and all of that, but just from what now having seen it, I guess what I would call your your compassionate lens. So
Mm-hmm.
can you tell me a little bit about, or tell our listeners a little bit about the film? I don't want to. I mean, we're going to get into it obviously more as the subject sort of unfolds and as we
Mm-hmm.
chat more about the issues. But tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind. Provide some context, and let's go from there.
Yeah, sure. So just very basically, the film follows three people who survived many years of street involvement in Toronto's Regent Park neighborhood, and they were drug users and sex workers and were homeless, and now are at a point in their 50s where they're trying to sort of turn their lives around and also give back to their community. And they do this through working in harm reduction at health agencies in Regent Park. And through their work and through the community, they try to help themselves while they're trying to help others. And so the film follows them for 5 years, and we see their sort of struggles over time and try to really take the audience into like a very in-depth look at their lifestyles in a way that I hadn't seen before, and really delve into what it's like to sort of walk a mile in their shoes.
Hugh, is this a film for you? Is this about empathy? Is this about Torontonians who drive by this area who don't even know that it exists, or who don't care that it exists? Does this become a metaphor almost for I guess, I don't know, the bigger question of taking care of ourselves and taking care of others?
Yeah, I like that way of looking at it. It really ties into some of the locations and the imagery of the film.
Sure.
And a lot of the subtext, which, for example, the characters will take you or take me as a director into places like Field of Dreams, which is a location that recurs throughout the movie, which is a place that you might walk by or drive past and not think anything of, but it's actually a landmark within that sort of drug-using community. And I think that it ties into this idea of being hidden in plain sight, and which also sort of applies more broadly to the sort of street-involved community. People within that world, they might think that people pass them by, people don't notice them, and maybe they don't, they tend to not value themselves after a time. And then through these programs and these agencies that the characters work in and doing harm reduction work, it's a sort of a different way of sort of valuing people in that world and being non-judgmental. I mean, that would be sort of the biggest thing, is that work is a non-judgmental approach to healthcare and to working with drug users, sex workers, people who are street involved, and taking us into this sort of world that is hidden in plain sight. That was important for me as a director and important to show in the film.
Would you say that when you set out to make a film like this, I mean, obviously, not obviously, but I would think that you start out with a certain idea. You're going to follow these stories. It's 2 or 3 or 5 people. You get to know them and so on, and things start to shift. Do you ever go in saying, okay, here's exactly what I want to say. I want to say that Toronto isn't quite Toronto the good that we think it is, like you
Right.
saw something, and it's almost like a visual essay. Like you go, okay, here's the argument I want to create, and here's my 3 characters, and I want to tell the world that they got it wrong about my great city.
Right. There was definitely an element of that.
Yeah.
I mean, if I go back to when the whole project was initiated back in 2011, I mean, at that time, I didn't know anything about harm reduction. I probably hadn't really spent any time, and even in Regent Park, and I've lived here my whole life in Toronto. But I think what really interested me as a director was when I met people in the community, when I met people who you see in the film, I thought, there's so much out there already in terms of films or shows, anything at all. I mean, there's a lot out there on drug use, street life, you name it. But I wondered, how come I haven't seen something that sort of captures the essence of Marty or Roxanne or the world that they're showing me. Why is that? And how come I haven't really heard of harm reduction? And how come I don't know anything about this? I read a lot. I watch a lot of movies. So I wanted to show things that would surprise me. And that was kind of what I started with, is asking the characters, once we got an idea of what the film might be, what the general direction might go in. Another thing I thought was, I don't really know of much where the subjects sort of take ownership for their own storytelling.
Right.
So where I could say to them, what's a place that was important to you? If you're going to tell me something about your past that's important, that nobody knows about, nobody understands, what was it like sleeping in stairwells, Marty? Where would you take me to make me understand that, And it was this kind of thing where they could take ownership of their storytelling. They could be involved in their own sort of self-expression.
Right.
And that was something that I hadn't really seen. And I hope that it comes through in the film. And you were talking about having a compassionate lens. And I think that played into it. And going places, kind of going further than what you might see in a news item.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like it's a doc, it's a film. It feels it's got sort of a journalistic edge. It's giving me this inside look into something that I wouldn't normally have access to, which is utterly brilliant on so many levels. But there's something more for me, I think, at least in my experience of the film. The intimacy of it is, frankly, it's a bit unsettling. On a few levels, it's so intimate. It's so kind of in your face sounds negative, and I don't mean it to be that at all, Hugh. I think in your face in the best sense of the word. And
it's intense at times.
Yeah.
And many of the shots can be close-ups. I mean, you see the pores in the skin. You see the big scar across Marty's face. So you see his eyes staring back at you through the lens intently. I thought that it would be really good to sort of put you in the same room and make you sort of, hopefully make you as a viewer feel like you're really there,
How close did you get to these folks? I mean, 5 years is a long time to make a film, it seems to me, especially about something, so sort of tangible and so deeply relational. I mean, it's almost like, did you end up living in the stairs with Marty for a little while?
No, never went that far.
How close did you get to these guys?
There was an element of professional distance.
Yeah, of course.
But I think it speaks more to the fact that they really wanted to go for it.
Huh.
They bought in from the beginning.
Sure.
They told me, we want you to show our lives for how they, as they really are. Show us, depict us honestly. That was something that Greg said specifically right from the get-go. Think about, from their point of view, they've lived through a lot of stigma and discrimination in all kinds of ways. And there's very few outlets within that world, for self-expression. So when Marty comes to me, surprising me one day that he's written this poem,
right.
I think that he loved the fact that he could, perform it on camera.
Is that the poem about the stairs?
Yeah, where the film's title comes.
Which is wonderful. He's quite the poet, actually.
Yeah, he really is. And these were the things that I really latched on to in terms of, there's so many preconceptions about drug use and sex work and, living on the street, right? And, isn't the reality quite a bit different? I mean, that's what I was quickly learning. And the fact that all of these people I was getting to know, they're so funny And I mean, and their characters,
right?
You know,
Yeah.
Marty said at one of the TIFF Q&As, like, you know, I am a character, and he really is. And I mean, you know, meeting them, you know, it was very obvious, you know, that they would be able to carry a movie, for example, and that was part of my you were asking about like process earlier, you know. It was a process-driven
Sure.
Piece where I would shoot a little and edit a little, and shoot a little and edit a little,
right.
And there wasn't a specific ending in mind when I started, but I knew that these people were so sort of, I don't know what the best way to describe it, maybe disarming. I mean, they're so funny, they're so articulate.
Yes. Oh, articulate as hell, man. I mean, so colorful.
Grandmother and grandfather, poet. These aren't the things that you think of when you think of crack user, street-based sex worker, etc. So, I mean, I wanted to show things that would surprise an audience and would surprise me. And sort of maybe change the conversation a little bit.
So surprise you. So are you a different I mean, silly question on a certain level, really. Are you a different person because you've made this? I mean, having known these folks, I mean, the empathy that, you know, going into the project, you say you learned all this about Toronto, you learned this about, you know, sex workers and drug addicts and so on. Are you more inclined to lend a helping hand now? You know what I mean? Has your own film actually had this? So. Yeah, I mean, on a certain level, holy smokes, how could you not be?
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. Well, it would be weird if I was like inspiring people to feel that way in a sense. I mean, people can feel however they want.
Yeah, of course.
Film, but you know, certainly the answer is yes, and I hope that the characters got something out of the process in terms of, you know, an opportunity for self-expression.
Sure.
I think that they did, but certainly I benefited in terms of, you know, my own knowledge and my own, I think, growth as a person. Yeah, absolutely.
It seems to me I mean, who knows how Marty, Greg, or Roxanne ultimately will come out of this experience, but you got to think they're going to look back and say, wow, that was profound. It was moving. I'm here because of that, or I'm there because of this. Do you know what I mean? Like it's going to have an impact one way or the other for sure.
Yeah, and I am happy to say that they are very pleased with the project.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
The final product, and the community has embraced it, and that was
that's great.
Very important for me as well. So,
do you have just
gratifying.
Just to go to community? Do you have any kind of plan in place to get it in front of? Changemakers, and when I say changemakers, I don't mean all of us. I mean more political changemakers, people that are writing policy, that are the mayor's office, et cetera, et cetera. Is there an opportunity?
Yes, absolutely. I'm really glad that you asked that. In fact, we're just about to announce today that on after one of the screenings of Lightbox, hopefully this will be the first of these such events. On Wednesday, October 12th, after the 6:40 p.m. screening, we're going to have a panel discussion moderated by Joe Fiorito from the Toronto Star. And it's going to be Toronto City Councillors Joe Cressy and Gord Perks are going to discuss the film and harm reduction policy and issues with Roxanne Smith, who's one of the lead characters in the film, as well as Rafi Balian, who is a sort of prominent harm reduction advocate at South Riverdale Community Health Center. And that location is important because it's one of the 3 sites that's been designated to be a supervised injection site in Toronto.
Oh,
so that'll
amazing.
Be hopefully a really interesting event and an opportunity to talk about the community and about harm reduction and this whole idea of peer work that comes up in the film.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh,
good for you. I mean, it's got to be pretty rewarding as a filmmaker to I don't know. Is that taking it to the next level? It seems to me it kind of is. It's getting it out of the theater and into the boardroom, maybe. I don't know.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wanted to make something that would sort of defy preconceptions, as I was saying. and showing it to policymakers, I think is an important part of that.
Well, Hugh, I could see people writing about this film in the future, students watching this, community care workers, mental health folks, I mean, it's I think it works on a variety of levels. That's for sure. I got to ask you. I mean, it's a pretty moving film. It's touching, and it's, as I said earlier, it's so intimate and such what I think a wonderful portrayal. And by the way, I haven't said it, but congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and the getting it to TIFF and the whole, it's got to be pretty crazy. You aptly named the film, the poem we just spoke about that Marty writes. And I think for me, probably the thing that's going to stick with me the most about the film is him taking us through, where he spent a big portion of his life. This stairwell. Hey, come on in. Here's the kitchen. Here's the washroom. Here's the living room. I thought that was delightful, and what a beautiful way. And probably quite unscripted way of unpacking the harsh reality of I don't know, being at risk, and heartbreaking on one level, and yet he had quite a sense of humor about it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he's a character, and you're right. It was unscripted, and it was just another one of those things where it's kind of done off the cuff and in the moment, and here we are. I'm just going to show you, and sometimes as a filmmaker, casting is 90% of the director's job, and you just got to be there and not screw up. But I mean that came from sort of letting Marty, and it's happened in other cases, letting them sort of take the lead.
Right.
Let them show what's important to them, and I could try to filter that through my own lens. Yeah.
What do you have to say about addiction? I mean, we all suffer from. I love the non-judgmental approach to this film, to these people, and I think so many of us could learn so much from that on so many levels with respect to all. With respect to just others, frankly, as parents, as teachers, as lovers, as friends. I mean, for the love, just dial it back a little bit on the judgment, and maybe just listen. Maybe just embrace, maybe just encourage, affirm, come alongside. One of the quotes, I think it was Roxanne. She said that her PTSD was quote comparable to somebody who had been at war. That was a pretty astounding claim, and I know PTSD is not just about being at war, but the degree to which this goes so deep. This isn't just about drug addiction; it's about so much more. Yeah. I mean, what did you take away, and having sort of lived this for so long?
Oh boy!
I know it's a huge question. It's crazy, it really is crazy. But I guess I'm just trying to say. I'm just trying to get to sort of the...
Well, listening is big, as you were saying. Listening's important. Not being judgmental is important. Empathy is important. I guess my willingness to listen and to be open-minded and to be curious is how, I was able to capture those scenes.
Yeah, it's nice.
And in terms of some of the heaviness of the film and some of the stories that are shared, I mean, they're not unique to those characters either. They're in fact, very, very common, to the point where there's one moment in the film, a long story that Roxanne tells about a bad date that she had. It's very emotional. And even when I was editing, there was a news item here in Toronto, and it was basically almost an identical story.
Wow.
Happened. It was really disarming, like how similar it was. And these types of things go on everywhere. And this is another thing that I felt while making this film, was that the movie's about a very specific neighborhood, Regent Park, but I feel like the stories happen everywhere.
Sure.
And there's a Regent Park everywhere,
right.
And there's nothing about it that is sort of, particular to Toronto. These things happen in probably every major city in North America.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I don't know if this is fair. Tell me, shut me down if you think this is unfair. But I mean, I kind of think we all have our own. Metaphorically, I think we all kind of have our own Regent Park. I mean, you know, the scene at the end of the film with the demo of the building, and I mean, that's just lovely on so many levels. The claw, I used to work in construction, so it took me back actually. But you know, just that whole sort of, I mean, we all need that, you know, and too, I love Hugh. I love the way at the end of the film, Marty is looking for Greg, and he's going down the stairs. We're back full circle. He's descend. You know, it's just looking for his friend. This. I mean, Marty's willingness to listen seems to be unbounded, and yet, which is really interesting, and this is a good lead into my question about responsibility. I wanted to ask you that. Marty's like seems to have a boundary with Greg, and he's like, okay, if that, I'm done. I'm done with him, right? But then he doesn't seem like he's really done with him, right? It seems like his compassion is like capital C, and yet he still wants to acknowledge the fact that, hold on a minute, Greg, you gotta ante up here, man, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, Marty has issues with anger, which he discusses in the film, and I think that part of being understanding is having patience, and sometimes that patience can be severely tested, especially if you care for the person.
Yes,
and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that in different ways. But you know, with the scene towards the end, you know, I felt like it's sort of the power of community and the power of the characters who want to help each other because maybe not necessarily anyone else will, and they want to give back and they want to help each other. And you know, I felt like that was a really good place to end. And especially, I was saying how it was a process-driven piece. And that scene, I mean, you know, I was looking for an ending. You know, the filming had gone for quite some time. I was, you know, had my eyes open, my ears open. I reached a point in the filmmaking process where I knew that I had, like, for example, A, B, and D, and I still needed C and E,
right,
you know, to make the film I wanted. And then I'd always trusted that when the ending came, I would know it.
Oh, okay.
And when that happened, I knew it was the ending.
Did you, are you talking about the shot in the car in the mirror?
I am.
you kind of knew. Okay, yeah, it's cool. Yeah. It's awesome. I kind of felt we were pretty close at that point myself, but still, that's pretty awesome. And I love there's a real beauty to that scene actually. That's really organic and just lovely with the mirror and just like you say, that sense of community and the sense of him of going after him. You know. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get this guy one way or the other. I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up on my friend Greg.
Yeah.
I got to ask you, Hugh. We're coming near the end of the interview here, I think. But I wanted to ask you about, for me this year at TIFF, you know, almost I think about, as I said earlier, about 30 interviews. I saw a lot of films. Mm-hmm. There's a sense, and even with the work that I do, you know, overseas international development, I do work locally as well. And I think of my own life, my own health issues, my own mental health issues, my own struggles, and you know, trying to come to terms with a little bit of everything. How's that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a line, and I think it was Judy who said, and she was talking about her family, and she said, you know what, I found my family elsewhere.
Yeah, Roxanne says that.
Is that Roxanne? Okay,
yeah,
thank you. Okay, it's Roxanne. You got Hugh in the stairs. You got Greg, who basically says at one point, I was an unwanted child. Mm-hmm. On what? I mean, and I think this is connected to this whole judgment thing. I mean, aren't we all, and I'm trying to, I guess, equate us and put us all in the same room here, aren't we all really just trying to do the same thing? Aren't we really all just trying to find our way back home in some way, shape, or form? And I think if that's true, I think your film just beautifully lays that out.
It's an interesting point. I hadn't really considered it that way. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sort of universal feelings, I guess you could say, about needing each other, needing, I don't know if companionship is the best word, but compassion, certainly.
Yep.
Understanding. Everyone needs an advocate or a friend at the right time. Yeah.
Well, there's
That's an interesting way of thinking of it.
I think there was a sense of loneliness to this that actually really resonated with me. I'm not a recovering addict, so I don't know. I can't walk in their shoes in that sense. But I guess that's what I meant about sort of, we all have sort of our own Regent Park in a way.
Oh yeah, sure.
And so many of us drive by it. And and the tragic thing is we don't even wave.
Yeah, right.
And that's for me, being the social change guy. It's like, what am I going to talk to Hugh about? I want to talk to Hugh about solutions. I want to know, how are we going to fix this? How do we come around these? And there are solutions. There are ways forward. But I think what your film shows is just, there's this, I don't know. I was going to use the word delightful, wrong word. But there's this sense of community. There are no easy answers. But we gotta work together. Yeah, the strength of people working together. Yeah, definitely. Just this sense of and even if they're, they're users, they're sex workers, they have ways of looking after each other and keeping each other safe, because they recognize that they have value as people, even if others don't share that opinion, I guess you could say. Yeah. Well, it's really beautiful to me how you've humanized that part of the city, how you've humanized Toronto in a sense, how you've humanized these folks, and just, I don't know, just really, really allowed, I think, the audience to really connect in a way that they probably are going to be surprised by. I hope so. By the end of the film. So opening this weekend at the Lightbox, for how long's the run? It's a week. Okay. So see it while you can. October 7 to 13 at Lightbox. And you have a website? Yeah, thestairsdoc.com. Thestairsdoc.com. We've been talking to Hugh Gibson. He's the director and producer of The Stairs. It's a film that you need to see, and it's a conversation that you have just listened to. Hugh, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your candor and your honesty. And again, thanks for the film. Oh, thank you very much, David. I appreciate it.